And I'll be like, damn, like, baby boy, come to mama. Well, if you want to help him have a release, you should f him. Higher endorsements of masculine norms, restrictive emotionality. Oh.
Hey, chat, how should I deal with my anxiety? And they were like, Sagan D's nuts, bro. And it turns out that they were right, because now we have daily...
This is Susie Loom. If you don't know me, hi, I'm a stand-up comedian by night, and I make these videos by day. And today we're gonna be doing something slightly different, but it makes total sense. We're gonna be watching Dr. K's or Healthy Gamer GG's How Anxiety is Different for Men. So it makes sense because 99% of comedians do some bit about men are like this, women are like these, this wives are like this female friends are like this, right? Gender dynamics is just a very rich topic for comedy. There is that inherent, lack of understanding between genders, mainly from older generations. So there is like it's, rich for comedy, but also it is a complex topic. And sometimes we'll be watching male comedians and I want to be able to understand better. Dr. K, I love his videos. He has actual support groups. He's an actual licensed mental health expert, and he is a gamer himself. And so he talks a lot to, men who feel disfranchised. Is that the right word? Nope, that's not having the right to vote. For men who feel disregarded. And I really like his videos, so I figured if you don't know him, you should know him. And if you don't really care about mental health, at the very least, you're gonna learn something about stand-up today. So let's get to it.
Today, we're going to talk about male-type anxiety. And that may sound weird because isn't anxiety anxiety? But it turns out that anxiety is a gendered concept.
Okay.
Men experience anxiety very differently from women. And this is a big problem because if we look at our research on anxiety, what we find is 2/3 of all people diagnosed with an anxiety disorder are women. And so what's the reason for that? Let's just think about that for a second, right? Does this mean that women are twice as likely to be anxious as men? Actually, no. It means that our definition of anxiety is a gendered construct. And the way that women experience anxiety is what we think of as traditional anxiety. But the way that men experience anxiety is actually completely different. So male-type anxiety is characterized by two things: low perceived control and physical symptoms. Now, this may sound kind of weird, so let me explain what low perceived control is. Men who have anxiety, their experience of life is like this. I'm surrounded by problems that are unfixable. I sort of feel like I have no control over my life. I kind of look around and I see situations that I can't fix, like my girlfriend is unhappy, or my wife is unhappy, or I keep on having conflict between my wife and my mom, and I don't know how to fix this, or I don't know what to do about my job. My career prospects are crap. The economy is crap. I can't buy a house. I can't date. Like, everything is falling apart. I can't control my life, and everything is shit. So you may look at that and think, but isn't that everyone? Like, doesn't everyone struggle with this? Isn't just this the normal life? And the answer is no. It turns out that there's a good chance that anxiety is at the root. But even weirder than that is that we have it kind of wrong. So if we look at the world right now, what we see is that there's a lot of problems that I can't fix. And what we think goes on is that the world is objectively bad. I cannot fix these things. This increases our stress and then gives us a perception that we are out of control. And we think that's an accurate perception, right? The world is shit, therefore I can't fix it. That's not in my head. The crazy thing is that you're right. It's not in your head. It's way weirder than that. The weirdest thing as we look at research on anxiety is not that this stuff is in your head, but actually you create the situations that are unsolvable because you have this stealth anxiety.
So I'm gonna try to unpack and let me know if I misunderstood him. Also, let me pause on a nicer frame for Dr. K here. Okay, that's better. That's a little better. I don't fully understand the second concept of the, I guess I can understand what he's getting at. Like, oh, you create the circumstances that are unchangeable through your perspective because you like create the world. I think he's going to get more into that. So I'm going to like pin that because I don't think I fully understand what he's getting at. But there is something that kind of registered to me is the idea of that sort of doomer, I can't fix this sort of anxiety. It's funny because I have felt that way and I thought I had depression, but then my psychiatrist said, no, you are so anxious, you feel paralyzed, which manifests looking like depression. Whereas like you're, I guess like yeah, like just paralyzed. You just can't do anything to fix it. I'm sorry, I'm like, this is just a serious video, but it's so interesting, right? And I wonder if that's similar to male anxiety to some extent, which is like a more paralyzed anxiety rather than like I feel like when I feel visibly anxious, right? It's like I'm tweaking. I have a bunch of little tics. If you've seen me in person, if you've seen me perform in person, you know the tics I'm talking about. I have like little thingies I do. My friends have been joking that my tics seem flirtatious because one of my tics is like I twirl my hair. The other one's I like twirl the back of my hair. The other one is I like bite my lips. But so I guess they're not the worst tics, but I do them a lot, and that's like seen as like anxiety, right? But worse anxiety looks, I guess, more morose, slower. I wonder if that's like more of male anxiety, so it gets confused with depression. It's made me sad too. I've had conversations with my male friends where it's like, I am super pro the idea of if you want something, you are in control of it. Like I say that I'm a person who could do arranged marriage. I feel like I am, if I want to change the way I perceive something, I am fully in control of that. But I mean, that is an unrealistic thing, right? But I think sometimes I see my male friends with like anxiety or depression or other like, you know, situations. And I'm like, but just change it. I wish I could change it for you. And I try to change it for them, but I can't, right? But I wonder if that's part of maybe my shock is that their anxiety comes in a somewhat more passive form. And we'll watch the rest of the video to understand. And mine, even when my anxiety looks like depression, maybe because I'm a woman, it's still a more active, more like desperate, clinging kind of anxiety rather than a doomer anxiety, a nihilistic anxiety. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna keep watching this. This is so interesting. This is amazing.
You have this stealth anxiety. Now, I know that sounds really weird, so I'm going to say it again. We think, okay, the world is crap. I'm out of control, right? So the circumstances come first. And then maybe Dr. K is making some point about, oh, this is like mindset or like cognitive reframing, or it's all about perceptions. It's about how we see the world. And if I change the way I see the world, things will be...
Look, he made a joke, guys. We did it. We laughed in this video.
Better, and it's all in my head. No. What's actually going on is if you have occult anxiety, this creates a perception of low perceived control. And this perception of low perceived control then creates events in your life that are unsolvable. Now, if that sounds crazy, hear me out because we're going to get into the science of it,
please.
Okay? I'm going to show you
I need an example of this. I'm so interested in this.
A lot of different research, which are going to be pieces of a puzzle. The tricky thing about this puzzle is that it's not going to make sense when you see one particular piece. When we stitch it all together is when we will see, holy crap, the way that I am understanding my life and the way that I can get control of my life is actually very different from what I thought. So bear with me. When people hear that we offer coaching at HG, their first question is like, what on earth even is that?
Okay. I'm not gonna skip this self ad because this is his coaching group, which I generally do recommend. He'll talk about it, but this is like a cool thing.
So here's the basic problem. When you struggle with something in your life, you don't see the problem from the outside. You see it from the inside. The value of a coach is that they can look at your life from the outside. They can understand what's going on, and they can help guide you to improve things like motivation, accomplish short-term goals, and even increase...
So this isn't like a therapy group, but what I've heard, I actually haven't done it. But a lot of my friends have done it, and they say it is predominantly like kind of a like Twitch demographic. So it's like young, like Zoomer millennial men with similar things like this is gonna sound dark, but it's like porn addiction and like isolation, loneliness, things like that, right? So if any of those seem relatable, you'll find if anything else, it'll be just like finding that you're not alone in it. But they are like they're trained in coaching, right? They're not like therapists, but I've heard it's a good like supportive vibe.
It's a sense of purpose in life. And over the long term, we also see improvements in feelings of depression and anxiety. And the best part is we've had over 100,000 coaching sessions, and we incorporate that feedback to continually improve our program. So if y'all are interested in actually making a change in your life, check out the link in the description below.
Yay.
So this is from a paper called Men's Anxiety, a Systematic Review. So let's take a look at what men's anxiety looks like.
Okay.
As such, young men reporting increased anxiety severity were more likely to report physical symptoms, headaches, loss of appetite, body tremors, and sensations of losing control instead of social disruptions, teariness, and interpersonal distress compared to age-matched women. So let's understand what this means, okay? The first thing we've got to do is define it, right? So this is characterized by low perceived control, and this is characterized by physical symptoms. Now, why is this significant? So if we look at anxiety diagnoses across the board, they are 2 to 1 in favor of women. So for every 2 women that's diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, we have 1 man that is diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. And
I'm surprised more men don't have IBS, because so many women who have anxiety, they have like digestive issues, which is a physical manifestation of it. Why? Is it because every man... Like, I feel like every man already, like, kind of has IBS. Does that make sense? Like, when a woman is, like, party, she has IBS. But if a man isn't just a man, maybe they do. Maybe men are underdiagnosed with IBS.
It's because our clinical criteria for an anxiety disorder are characterized by these other things that are more common in women. So a lot of these characterizations are internal feelings, like being worried, being anxious, right? That's the word that we use. These are anxiety disorders. But it turns out that men don't feel that anxiety in the same way that women do. And there are a couple of really good reasons for this.
That actually makes so much sense. Oh.
The first is that women have more estrogen. And estrogen as a hormone makes us more aware of our internal emotional state. So women are...
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to marry a soy boy. Like, legit. I'm gonna pump my future husband with so much estrogen. That's gonna do it.
Able to feel their emotions more easily. But it isn't
and
that
I'm gonna take my estrogen and give it to them so I feel less. I've cracked it. I've cracked it.
So in behavioral observation studies of boys and girls, boys were disproportionately encouraged by parents to confront stressful and fearful stimulants, whereas girls were more commonly comforted by their parents when displaying a fearful or anxious response. So sure, estrogen is at play, but then the way that we're socialized is also at play. And what boys are taught to do is confront and fix our problems.
That's funny, because that is kind of the opposite of what I just said. Okay, but we can watch it.
As opposed to doing some kind of emotional support or awareness.
Interesting.
Okay? So now we see these are like 2 reasons why men don't experience anxiety, quote unquote, normally. Because we're actually socialized to not focus on our feelings, but to fix our problems. Okay? So this is a second reason.
I want him to get to the idea of like, okay, so if men are taught, right? I feel like it is harder to comfort a man. Like a few of my comments, right? There's a video that's about that, and I feel like a couple people seemed pretty sad, and I wanted to be like, hey, here's a hug. Like, not all women are gonna treat you like this. I do think some women are bitches. You know what I mean? Like, I do understand some people have had traumatic experiences, and I want to be like, hey, it's okay. Like, not everyone is like that, which feels pick me, but it's also like I genuinely, like, I studied I studied theater and psychology because I was already a streamer, and I was like, I need to understand, like, I want to understand like who I'm talking to, right? I really do care. But it's like, how do you comfort like men if they are taught to not be comforted? I hope he gets to that, because I really do, right? If I see like someone who's sad, I want to get them to open up, and I want to be there, and I want to know how to do that in a way that isn't like imposing a like female kind of release, Oh, when I put it like that, it's like, well, I'll make the joke, but it's like, well, if you want to help him have a release, you should fuck him. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sleep with every sad man, guys. Wow. I feel like no one else, I thought of that joke. I was like, oh, that's an obvious joke I'm going to make it. But probably people are going to watch it and they're like, no one thought of that joke. Why'd you say that? That was fucked up.
So this is why men's anxiety and women's anxiety is different. It's because the way that we're raised is because of estrogen. So what contributes to men's anxiety? In contrast, higher endorsement of masculine norms, including restrictive emotionality, restricted affectionate behavior towards other men, and overt heterosexual presentation were all associated with
higher endorsements of masculine norms, restrictive emotionality, restricted affectionate behavior toward other men. Well, this makes sense.
Increased levels of anxiety in young and adult men. What on earth? Restricted emotionality and heterosexual norms. Hold on a second, Dr. K. Are you telling me that if I'm straight, I'm more likely to experience anxiety? Kind of, right? So many years ago, I asked chat, hey, chat, how should I deal with my anxiety? And they were like, Sagan D's nuts, bro. And it turns out that they were right, because now we have daily...
Oh my God. That is funny. Oh my God. Okay, well, Dr. K is amazing. He even puts a laugh in the middle so you're not too tense. Oh.
That shows us that heterosexual norms, i.e. preference for a particular kind of genitalia, is associated with higher levels of anxiety. Turns out that's not actually what the paper is saying, so let's understand this, okay? What we mean by heterosexual norms is restrictive emotionality and sort of burying our emotions. So the manly man is not very emotional, right? So I'm like, man, I'm going to fix my problems. So we don't talk about, we'll fix them. Like if it ain't worth fixing, so that's what we mean, okay? Has nothing to do with what your genital preference is. It's entirely about your restriction.
Okay, that could explain, like, I do feel like the comedy space has, you know, has some amazing guys. I was actually, I was trying to get into the roasting circuit, and I was meeting like a few people who are like judges for roasting stuff, and I was like, okay, like I want to try it, right? And I was talking to them, and they were literally like the like sweetest like people. Like I was like stunned, because it's like roasting, right? You think it's the most aggressive people, but now it was the sweetest people. But in general, so I would say, like, honestly, maybe roasting is an exception, but in general, there's a lot of toxicity. And I do wonder if it's that impulse to tell a joke instead of be earnest. If you constantly do that, maybe you are like, you know, feeding into that sort of, maybe not fixing it, but avoidant sort of tendencies that I guess maybe might be associated with masculinity. Because I do feel like certain women that I know who are like more avoidant of their feelings are funnier. Is that mean to say? Like, maybe it's like, it helps you turn a bad situation into comedy more quickly, maybe. Or be able to riff. Maybe it's like you need a bit of that wall to make things funny. You can't be too earnest. Like, right? If you're talking about, I'm so sad my parents got a divorce, that's not funny. But if you have a certain level of detachment, yeah, maybe. That's my PhD thesis when I get one on that.
Okay? Has nothing to do with what your genital preference is. It's entirely about your restrictive emotionality. So this creates another challenge, because if we are manly men, right, which is like good men, like as boys, we're like, be a good man. What this means is we're not aware of our internal emotional state, which in turn means that even though our anxiety is high, we don't feel anxiety, right? Instead, what we see is, oh my God, this situation is out of control and I can't fix it. Now we get to the craziest part, which is, remember that I said that the real tragedy of men's anxiety is that we believe our life is out of control. And we sort of think like, oh, Dr. K is talking about like, oh, we need to do something cognitive, right? To change my perception. And then like, once I like understand this all in my fucking head, then everything will be better. No. The crazy thing is our low perception of self-control doesn't just shape our internal environment, it actually creates the problems that are unsolvable. Now, if this sounds insane, that's because it is. So here's another paper, fantastic paper from Auerbach, who's at McLean at Harvard. So Randy's an awesome person. The stress generation framework posits that characteristics, behaviors, or circumstances within an individual's life context contribute to the occurrence of dependent stressful events. So this may sound crazy. So what this sort of means is that more recently, Auerbach, Eberhardt, and Abella found that low perceived control, a belief that one may have the limited ability to change views of the self, world, and future, contributed to greater dependent interpersonal stress. The crazy thing about Auerbach's research is that it demonstrates that low perceived control isn't just in your head. And it's not that you misinterpret the world. It is that when you have low perceived control, which is related to male type anxiety, which you can't feel, which we'll get to in a second. When you have low perceived control, it shapes the way that you interact with the world and creates unfixable situations.
I wonder if there's a correlation. So the personality disorders like borderline personality disorder, narcissism, they tend to have one of the categories be something along the lines of like a low, I don't know if I'm using the correct terminology, but it's like I know BPD is like low sense of self. I know narcissism has something along those lines as well. I could just look it up so I don't say bullshit. So obviously there's some confirmation bias here, right? Because that's the impression that I have, and this kind of confirms it. But I feel like a lot of people with some sort of personality disorder, mainly, they have a sort of a confused sense of self, a compromised self-concept in some shape or another. And so when you have low perceived control, my impression is that has a correlation to you having a low sense of self. Let me think about that. Okay, wait, we're gonna watch this again, and then I'll try to see where I was getting at. Okay, so I got it. Okay, so here's my theory. Okay, so this is why I pulled this up, guys. It took so long, I forgot what my point was. So, okay, God, let me lock in so I don't. Okay. So I think if you have low perceived control, there are two parts to it. So low perceived control, there's something, I guess, sort of doomer about it, which is like, I cannot change this thing, right? So you hear that a lot with older people, like, this is an inherent thing. I am like this. So you might cause situations where you think like, oh, well, this is just how men are. This is just how I am, right? And you do things or certain patterns of behavior that end up having negative consequences and then causing what Dr. K mentioned, just like kind of that loop of believing that you can't change things kind of causes unchangeable situations. And then two, my impression is that might be correlated with a low sense of self. So a low awareness of who you are, because being out of control to me, like I believe we as people are just so much more capable of shifting our actions than I think most people's rhetoric claims, right? I think people are rather like people have a high neuroplasticity, and higher than they think. So to me, it seems like it would to me correlate with a low sense of self, since like you see it as being like very common in like a lot of personality disorders, including narcissism, which is like, oh, he's a narcissist. Yeah, but that's like, it is an illness, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean someone's a bad person, right? But having a compromised sense of self, to me, my impression to how it would correlate is if you don't really know who you are, you might have these like dogma about like, I am like this, because you're not really in touch with your whole self, right? Like, I am an angry man, right? But if you were fully aware of the breadth of feelings behind that, if you understood yourself better, you would not have these like these dogma about yourself. And if you didn't have these like specific perceptions of yourself, then you would understand that you have a lot more control of yourself, and by understanding the control you have of yourself, I think you would understand that you have that same control over the circumstances around you, therefore the world. Does that make sense? It is a lot that I'm saying, but I think he'll say it better. But my theory is that men's perceived lack of control of the world stems from a lack of awareness of just, I guess, how complex they are, and just how every shade is in them, right? Because they're taught to just feel these specific things and manifest in these specific ways, but really they have as many colors, if not more, than women when they feel, right? But they're taught to suppress half of them. They're like a half rainbow. They're just like yellow and red instead of having all the purples and blues and all of that.
World and create,
and that's why gay men don't suffer from that as much. Or I don't know if he said that they didn't, but because they have the full rainbow because of whatever.
Unfixable situations. So as a simple example, okay? So let's say that I'm worried that I can't make my wife happy. And so if I sort of believe that in some way, that will affect my behaviors, right? I will try a little bit less, because what's the point in making her happy if I'm doomed to fail? What's the point in dating if
I think it comes from him believing that he's incapable. You know what I mean? It's a lack of awareness of just how capable he is and how good this theoretical man is, you know?
Never going to find anyone anyway. So as we start to have some of these perceptions of low perceived control, what the research actually shows is that this creates problems in our life. It's not that The problem comes first, and then I feel like I'm out of control. It's actually the other way around. Perceive control as predictors of anxious symptoms and stress. So the key thing about this paper is that this comes first. It doesn't come next. This predicts the anxiety. This creates the anxiety. This creates the stress. It's not that the stress creates the perception of low control. It's the other way around. Okay, here's me, and here's the world. And the world is fucked. And then what ends up happening is we conclude, I can't win, right? This becomes a logical conclusion. So what ends up actually happening, what the research shows us, is here is me. Here is my perception of low control. This creates a situation that is unsolvable. This then generates stress. Now this gets kind of weirder, right? There are a couple of other things. So this perception of low perceived control is anxiety that we are blind to. So we don't see it. Okay? There's no seeing of the anxiety.
So that's where I I do wish men and women just loved each other a little more in the not in the romantic sense, but where it's I feel like I know a lot of women, right? And Chappelle was talking about that. We could use a little less of that. I think we could use a little less perception of control. I know, at least me personally, I am aware, sometimes, I'm well, if I do this, then that, right? And I think too much, sometimes, someone's a dick to me, or, people can be so mean randomly for no reason, right? Someone's you're cringe. Let me, talk shit about you, right? And I'm right, but if I do 10 nice things to them, and I call them out on being mean, then that means that you're going to realize, no, it doesn't necessarily, right? So I think the perception of excessive control can bring about anxiety. And with men, oftentimes it's a perception of less control. So if both learn from one another, then there could be a better healthy perception of control, not exaggerated, not diminished, but rather a healthy understanding of how much you are in power. Which is I guess it's you can change anything about yourself, but you really can't change anything about anyone else, I guess is the healthiest amount of control perception. But yeah, I think what we have too much of, but sometimes men have less of, and just learn from one another, dog.
Eyeball. We don't see the anxiety. Now, why is this important? Why do I believe that anxiety is at the root of this? So now we go back to the amygdala. So see, our amygdala, men and women both have amygdalas. We both have this fucking part of our brain, lizards have it too. That this is where anxiety comes from. The problem is that subjectively, we don't experience it as anxiety.
So lizard people also have amygdalas.
So when the amygdala lights up in a man, because of our restricted emotionality, because of our heterosexual norms, because of the way that we're taught to fix our problems, we don't feel this anxiety. But it's still active. And let's understand what the impact of this anxiety actually is.
That's
so let's say I have a problem that is of 5 difficulty. And then what ends up happening is I have 5 units of anxiety. And then what happens is these combine to create my actual perception, which is 10 units of difficulty. Now, I know this sounds kind of weird, but I want y'all to just think about this for a second, right? So think about the friends of yours who are anxious and they're worried about stuff, right? So when they're worried about stuff, how likely is that thing to come to pass, right? So if I'm paranoid that, oh my God, my teacher is going to kick me out of class because I sent an email asking for an extension. So when the amygdala is active in our brain, this isn't that they're not dumb or anything like that. This is literally what happens in the amygdala. What the amygdala does is amplifies the perception of things going bad. So what it does is if the risk is actually 10%, the amygdala will literally amplify it to 20% or 30% or 40%. Okay? Now, this is where things get really tricky. So if we have amygdalar activity that we are not aware of because of emotional restriction, now what we have is we have 10 units of difficulty. And the actual difficulty is only 5, but this is our perception over here. So now this problem seems larger than it is, and this is where we get into really tricky things. Because once it starts to get out of control, right, because we can't handle 10 units. 10 units is too much. Then we get back to this. So furthermore, when evaluating socialized gender roles and coping behavior, individuals with higher levels of masculinity were more likely to employ problem-based coping, regardless of biological sex. So what this statement is talking about is that basically, like, the more masculine you are, the more you try to fix your problems, right? And then this suggests a strong adherence to traditional masculine norms may impact expectant coping behaviors in men, prompting action-oriented problem-solving approaches in the face of elevated anxiety levels. So this makes sense, okay? So I'm going to translate this for a second once again. So this means is like, if you're a dude and you've got a problem in life, what do you do about the problem? You fucking fix it. Right? That's all this is a fancy way of saying the more manly you are, the more you just fix your problems, because that's like, what else am I supposed to do with problems, right? If you're listening to this and you're like, Dr. K, that's dumb. What else are you supposed to do except for fix a problem? Like, what else can you do? Here's the problem. In contrast, there may be a threshold at which the tendency to revert to problem-based coping strategies exacerbates anxiety if solutions cannot be reached by men accustomed to self-remedy. Okay? Previous research evaluating stress and coping suggests that problem-based coping may only be effective when stressors or situations are controllable or can be...
Well, I think I would say, okay, this is obviously just my perspective on this, right? It might not be exactly what this is getting at, but hear me out. It could be that the stressor situation are controllable and can be adjusted, but the self-remedy, like the solution that these men or this man, whatever, in this, well, I'll do one scenario, right? Because I don't want to generalize it, are coming to are just not the actual solution. You know what I mean? Like, let's say a man tries to flirt with a woman. And the woman responds in a sort of scared way, like, you know, kind of acting, treating like he's a creep. And then his response is to be like, I'm not being a creep. Women always do this. Why can I not flirt with a pretty lady? Right? His solution is honestly, it maybe his perceived solution is call the woman out on her problematic behavior. That could seem like a valid solution, but realistically, right, that's not really going to make the woman now want to sleep with you and fall in love with you, right? The realistic solution would be maybe have that as a boundary, right? If a woman is like that, makes you feel like any flirtation is inappropriate, you don't date that kind of woman. Or maybe it is like apologizing for coming out maybe too aggressively. And like asking her like about herself, or maybe why she has that response of like, oh no, like what guy has creeped you out so much that you're responding like that, and you know, that kind of empathy, which would be hard, you know, in response of someone's aggressive, like villainizing you, right? But you know, ideally maybe a response more like that would solve the problem. But those kinds of responses require such a high level of like responding to someone being unreasonable by being reasonable is so hard, but oftentimes is a solution. So. And I think that could apply to either gender, but because it's talking about men, I'm just using men as an example, but women do that too. But the idea of like, there is a solution, but when you think of like, I'm going to solve this, like, I'm going to call her out, I'm going to tell her to stop doing that, I'm going to call my friend, I'm going to like, whatever, laugh it off, right? That's not a solution, it's like a Band-Aid. But if you're actually trying to solve the problem, I think I suspect that in many instances there is a solution and it is rather controllable to some extent, or rather maybe you can't fix the situation, but you can improve it. But because you're trying to like patch it, and look, I've done that so many times. I'm like, but this is the right thing, but it's not the right thing. It's like, there's just so many options always, right? Like, and sometimes you're making the wrong choice because you can't take a breath and you're acting hastily, right? I'm so guilty of that, you know? So I think people's hasty solutions are oftentimes not the real solution, and that exacerbates problems. So if you're trying to fix too fast, if you see a problem and you're like, fix, you're going to go with like your first or second assumption of how to fix rather than the 10th, which is probably the correct, calmer way to fix it. Okay, I think I figured out how to say it. It took me so long. Women be yapping, right?
Justin,
no,
what this means is that problem-based coping only works if you can fix the problem. So then what happens in men when we can't fix a problem? So now let's go back to our diagram, okay? So this is important. Because if we can't fix the problem, what does it do? So now we get to see how everything ties together. So here's what really happens. Here's me. I am faced with a problem. And then I have this occult, which means hidden, anxiety. Okay? So this problem is 5 units. And this anxiety adds 5 units of difficulty. It's like we're playing the game on hard mode. And this, once we start playing the game on hard mode, now this is 10 units of difficulty. Okay? This mob is now too high for our level because we're level 5. But because of our occult anxiety, we perceive this as level 10. As we perceive this as level 10, this creates stress. Why does it create stress? It creates stress because if we are faced with problems that we cannot fix, what happens? We get stressed out, right? So let's understand this. So if I were to say, hey, you person who is watching this YouTube video, I want you to wash your hands. Does this stress you out? No. I don't need to be stressed out if I'm washing
Well, some people in chat, it would stress you out.
my hands because I am capable of doing it. No biggie. I can wash my hands. Stress is created when we face problems that we perceive as unsolvable. So as we perceive this problem as unsolvable, this increases our stress, increases our cortisol, furthermore, increases our anxiety.
And cortisol makes you ugly, guys. Okay, if you're trying to be cunty, cortisol makes your face poofy.
Even more, and then also leads to physical symptoms, headaches, tension,
Poofy
muscle
face.
aches, all this kind of stuff, nausea. Dudes have like just these weird like aches and pains, and like I'm not sure. I need to go to the gym, but I can't go to the gym. Like all this kind of stuff happens, and then these two things then lead to a perception of low perceived control, right? Because now this problem is too big to solve. And then this leads to dependent stressors. These are the actual problems that get created in your life. This is the actual sequence of things.
Oh my God.
It's not this up here. It is actually the opposite. It is this over here. Here's you. Here's a real problem plus anxiety. This makes it overwhelming, but you don't really see this. Remember, we are not able to see that. This creates a stress response. This then creates dependent interpersonal stressors. This creates the problems in your life. This is what the research shows.
Okay, this actually, I feel like I do that. Oh my God. Wait, isn't this beautiful, guys? Isn't this like, and that's every Dr. K video. There's so many videos, and every one of them will make you go, oh my God, I am so stupid. I am living my life wrong. Wow, what a beautiful channel, isn't it?
And this is the real tragedy of male type anxiety. First of all, why are we not diagnosed with it? Because most people are not aware of this picture. Y'all have to understand this. This is put together from 2 places. I did a bunch of research, but then I also work with a bunch of people who are black-pilled. So when I work with people who are black-pilled, what do they say? They say, this is going wrong, this is going wrong, this is going wrong, this is going wrong. I can't fix my life. This is screwed, this is screwed, this is screwed, this is screwed. And then along comes Dr. K. Now, everyone thinks, oh my God, Dr. K is a miracle worker.
You know what's funny? I think a lot of therapists, my impression has been that there is a high amount of therapists who are somewhat black-pilled. Some people will, like, they are a little bit, but you are like that, but you are like that. And that's funny because he's saying like, oh, these clients are coming black-pilled. I think I've seen a lot of people, I've heard from a lot of people and just like seen, like their therapists seem a little black-pilled, a little doomer, which is interesting. Maybe it is from interacting with enough clients who are like that it kind of, I don't know, it seems wrong, right? It seems like that's a problem.
Maybe Dr. K can fix me, but I can't fix all those problems. I can't fix any of those problems, right? I can't fix the dating crisis. I can't fix this other kind of stuff. I can't fix any of that.
Yeah.
So it turns out that when I work with someone who's black-pilled, what I really target is their underlying occult anxiety. So this whole sequence can be broken apart if you understand how it works and understand where to target things. Where's the real inception of this? The inception of this is the unfelt anxiety that exacerbates your problems. The real place to target this is when your amygdala amplifies the size of a danger, right? And I want you all to think back to when you were little kids and you were scared in your room at night. And when you were scared, if your parents tried to tell you, hey, there's no real danger, this problem does not exist, could you understand? No, this problem does not exist. Of course not. The child believes that the shadow on the wall is a monster. It takes this hypothetical fear and turns it into a reality.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing about people who are blackpilled, and they will dispute this, is they are living in the same world that we are living in, right? We're all living in the same world. Things are hard for everyone, but they say, oh, no, but my chin is smaller and I'm 5'2". Everyone has some objective disadvantages. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying fundamentally, this part we need to really focus on. And this has been my experience. When we target the anxiety, when we reduce the anxiety, this whole cascade falls apart. So then you are faced with problems that are no longer overwhelming. Once you are faced with problems that no longer feel overwhelming, then your stress level goes down. As your stress level goes down, your perception of control increases. And this is the beautiful thing. Once your perception of control increases, you actually start fixing the problems in your life. You stop.
Okay, so this is gonna sound dark, men. Okay, bear with me. Okay, I am prone to liking short. I mean, it's no surprise, right? Look at my Twitter. I like shorter, like autistic, gamery, like I know I people are gonna be like, you're lying to be grifting or whatever, right? No, I do. It is what I like, and that is who I am, right? But I've from experience, just it's like even in my friendships, right? I am drawn to people who are like me, so I'm friends with a lot of people or liked people who feel like they are not liked, if that makes sense. And something I have noticed is just like when you feel sort of doomer, oh, I am undateable, this or that, right? And it's like, even you see like with mass shooters, so many of them are hot, dude. So many of them are hot. But if you have that perceived like sort of doomer perspective, I think that, you know, look, there are women who are shallow and they're like, you're short, right? And they suck. I mean, no offense. I mean, have your taste, but I don't think that's great. But there are women who just learn from having been with insecure guys the kind of problems that creates. So he does have a good point. Like, if you are a like emotionally mature, whatever kind of guy, genuinely, like I heard this joke for Maria Bamford's opener. I laughed. I think I laughed too loudly at that joke. And not that many people did. I'm going to butcher it. But the gist of the joke was men keep going to the gym, which is like gay shit, because like no woman is into that. Like, learn to cry, or you know what I mean? Or learn to be in touch with your feelings or some other shit. Like, that's what women actually care about. No one's having sex with their abs. Like, you know what I mean? I think, yeah, like if there's definitely other assets that you can have, but if you really feel like it's doomer, I look this way, right? No one's ever gonna love me. It's gonna make you probably a pretty bad partner. You're gonna have some unresolved issues that you gotta resolve. And maybe even a bad friend, but usually a better friend than a partner.
Creating additional problems because of your perception of low self-control. And we hear this advice everywhere, right? Just get started. Just get started. Just get started. Just act. And this is the tragedy of male-type anxiety. We probably have a bunch of men out there, maybe as much as 5% of the population, so 1 out of 20 men, who is experiencing anxiety in some way, but they're not aware of it. All they see is that the world is black-pilled. I can't do anything about this. 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 And the tragedy of that is it is that belief that creates the objective situation. It isn't just in your head.
Yeah.
This actually creates the problems.
It's hard to tell people that too, though, because it feels like you're intellectually superior. Like, but I see the world how it really is. I'm like, yeah, okay. I know I've felt that way. I'm like, yeah, but I really see the truth. And it's like, yeah, okay, but you live a less happy life, you know?
Your life. So what do we do about it? Start by, first of all, does this picture fit you, right? Do you look at the world and is your primary experience of the world, hey, or not maybe not primary, but a big part of your experience that I feel out of control? If you feel out of control, you may have this male type anxiety. The icing on the cake is going to be if you also have these like physical symptoms and stuff like that, this is going to be really another really important sign. The cool thing is the way that we're going to fix this, by all means, go see a therapist, get a diagnosis, start doing psychotherapy. All that stuff is really fantastic. But the couple of things that we need to change are, first of all, our emotional awareness to recognize, is my amygdala in a hyperactive state, right? And you won't feel worried or tearful or anxious. You'll just be like stressed out, right? So the main thing that you're going to feel is stress and physical symptoms and low perceived control. Then you have to do the hard work of uncovering that anxiety, uncovering these distortions, uncovering the source of your perception that your control is not there.
I'm sorry. It's funny because I was talking to my therapist about just like life and stuff, and like my therapist was just like, you're like too empathetic. But like I feel like if I see someone, maybe it's because I have a great dad. Maybe I have the opposite of daddy issues, but like if I see someone, like I have this friend who had like a really long breakup and it's been like a year since the breakup, but like sometimes I'll be talking to him, I'm like, I see the sadness and I just want to give a hug. But I don't think he's like, maybe he's aware, but he's really not showing it, or maybe he's not aware of just like how I don't know, like I feel like it would be really condescending and weird to just randomly be like, it's okay. But yeah, like that hidden anxiety is crazy. It's like sometimes people will do crazy angry bullshit at me and I'll be like, damn, like baby boy, come to mama. Is that weird? Like I feel like I should like own an orphanage. Like I'm like, I really want to just like people to be happy. I should probably take care of myself. I have enough problems.
Life. And as you target those kinds of things, so we have a whole guide to anxiety. We do all these different exercises and community events and stuff like that. Basically focus on that anxiety because it's not going to look like anxiety, but do all of those same kinds of things. So physical exercise is really great for men. Mind-body practices are really fantastic too, but really target that anxiety. And what you will see is something that I've seen with black pillars over and over and over again, who I've worked with, is that something changes. Once we start decompressing that emotional energy, literally once we start calming down the amygdala, suddenly this is a child in a bedroom who sees that this is not an actual monster, this is just a shadow. And it could be a monster, could be a monster. Let's be honest, could be a monster. Things could be bad. Things may not work out, but their amygdala is not amplifying the danger and making it feel more real. As that goes away, our sense of control increases. And once we have a perception that we can fix this game of life, then things actually start to get better. We see those dependent stressful events start to improve, and then their life objectively gets better. So if you're a dude out there in this fits, please, please, please take it very seriously. Consider seeing a professional about it. Consider working on your anxiety. And if y'all want more information, check out our guide to anxiety. And the last thing that you can do, remember, those heterosexual norms lead to an increased experience of anxiety that we don't even feel. So I'll let you figure out what that last thing
oh my God, he's amazing.
Potentially do it.
That was such a fantastic ending. I'm like emotional. Like this is literally beautiful. Oh, this was like transformative. Wow, he's amazing. That was beautiful. Yeah, I'm sorry you guys feel that way. I know a lot of people are like, oh yeah, when men feel anxious, they go to the gym. I'm like, yeah, but he's literally saying that helps. Yeah, so ladies, learn more about men, and like men also do the same thing, you know what I mean? Like, wouldn't it be nice if we just had just that deep of an understanding of ourselves and our partners or prospective partners or sisters or whatever, right? That's so cool. This is beautiful. I'm gonna rewatch this a few times and just marvel. Am I weird? This was like so amazing. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope like this does something for you, or doesn't, you know, maybe doesn't even give you too much understanding of yourself. Maybe you're that self-aware, but maybe a friend or something. But yeah, definitely subscribe to Dr. K. He has really cool groups. He's an awesome dude. He's my goat. Yeah, and I love reading scientific articles for fun. I think just like reading journals, just look up different topics, just read about them. That's always fun. You always find a little tidbit you didn't realize, or just like some food for thought. it's a fun thing to try to do. And there's some crazy studies out there, mainly like thesis. Like thesis papers oftentimes have weird like parallels. Like, is there a correlation between like watching the Demon Hunter movie and happiness? Like, those are very fun. Yeah, so definitely check them out and let me know your thoughts. I'd love to see like your perspective, like even if you disagree with everything he said, everything I said. That might give me some food for thought and some inspo to read more and understand more. So yeah, thank you guys for sharing this video with me and sharing this experience. I love Dr. K's channel, so you should all love it as much as me. And have a good day. I'll end it on Dr. K's joke, so we end on a happy note. Hey man, go suck a little.